You're tired. Not just physically tired, but tired of being knocked around. Tired of being solid one day and then completely off the next. Tired of good news lifting you up and bad news taking you all the way back down. You don't need another pep talk. You don't need another productivity hack. What you need is something that doesn't move. Something you can stand on when everything around you is shifting. And today, I want to show you how to build that. And once you have it, no storm will ever be able to take you out again. Now, here's what I've noticed about most people, and maybe you'll recognize this in yourself. When things are going well, you feel great, confident, clear, like yourself. But when something goes wrong, the deal falls through, the relationship gets rocky, someone says something critical, the numbers dip, and suddenly you're not just dealing with a problem, you're questioning who you are. Your mood follows your metrics. Your confidence follows the comments. Your sense of worth shifts with whoever is impressed with you today. And this isn't weakness. I want you to hear that. This is what happens when you build your identity on things that were never meant to hold that weight. Jesus tells a story about this. 2 men, 2 houses, the same storm. One man built on sand and the other built on rock. The winds came from both of them. The rain fell on both of them. The storm didn't discriminate, but one house fell and one house stood. The only difference was the foundation. So the question isn't whether storms are coming. The question is, what are you standing on? I want to tell you about a man named Viktor Frankl. In the 1930s, Frankl was a brilliant psychiatrist in Vienna. He had everything: a career, a reputation, a family, a future. He had even written a manuscript, years of research about the human mind and the search for meaning. And then everything was taken. The Nazis came. Frankl was arrested, stripped of his title, his clothes, his name. They gave him a number. His wife was taken. His manuscript was destroyed. Every external marker that said, "I am Viktor Frankl," was gone, and he was sent to Auschwitz. Now, here's what I want you to see. Inside the camps, Frankl became a student of something haunting. He watched the men around him, and he noticed that the ones who died fastest weren't always the physically weakest. They were the ones who had nothing left to live for. The one whose entire identity had been located in what they had, their status, their role, their possessions. When those things were taken, there was nothing left inside to survive for. But Frankl made a different choice. In the middle of the camp, he held on to a vision. He imagined himself on the other side of this nightmare, standing in front of a lecture hall, teaching students what he had learned. He carried his calling like a flame. Nobody could see it, but no one could extinguish it either. The guards, they took his name, they took his family, they took his freedom. They could not touch the one thing that mattered. Viktor Frankl survived Auschwitz. He walked out of those camps and wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. It became one of the most widely read books of the 20th century. The foundation held, not because his circumstances were okay. They weren't. But because he was standing on, and what he was standing on couldn't be taken. So what was Frankl standing on? A sense of meaning, a calling, a vision of who he was created to be and what he was here to do. And here's what I want to say to you directly. The same thing is available to you. Not a calling you manufactured, not a vision you hyped yourself into believing, but something God put in you before you were born. A dream he placed in your heart. A word that he had already spoken over your life. And here's what I've learned. You don't really know someone until you hear them talk about their dreams. When someone tells you what God put in their heart, their real dream, the one they've been carrying quietly, you're not hearing their resume. You're touching their real identity. That's the rock. Not what you look like, that changes. Not what people think about you, that shifts with the wind. Not how you feel. The feelings are the most unreliable foundation in the world. Only one thing about you is truly unchanging. What God says about you. Who He says you are. and the calling that He put in your heart. Build there, and nothing can take you down. Now, this isn't a new idea. It's actually one of the oldest documented patterns in history. Think about it. Joseph, at 17 years old, God gave him a dream, a vision of his future, a calling, and then life started stripping everything away. His own brothers threw him in a pit and sold him into slavery. He went from favored son to property, then from slave to prisoner after a false accusation destroyed his reputation. Every external identity marker was gone. Every reason to believe the dream was dead. But the dream survived every pit, every prison, and every betrayal because it wasn't built on his circumstances. It was built on a word God had spoken. Joseph came out of prison and became second in command of Egypt. He saved nations. The foundation held. And then there's David, anointed king of Israel and then hunted like a criminal by the very king that he served, living in caves, surrounded by men who were questioning him. And in those caves, David wrote psalms, out loud conversations with himself, where he was talking himself back into what God had said, back to who he actually was, back to the rock. These aren't just Bible stories. These are the oldest documented evidence that we have that a God-given identity can survive anything the world throws at it. Let me ask you something. What is your identity resting on right now? If the followers disappeared, would you still know who you are? If the title changed, would you still know who you are? If the relationship ended, or the business struggled, or a season got hard, would there be something left inside you that didn't move? The invitation isn't to try harder to feel secure. It's to go deeper, to get back in touch with what God spoke over your life, the dream that He put in you, the calling that was there before anyone else knew your name. That's not arrogance. That's not self-promotion. That's just knowing who you are and what you're here for. And when you know that, when you really know it, the storms, they don't stop coming, but they stop taking you out. Two houses, same storm, one standing, one gone. The difference was never the storm. It was always the foundation. So don't build on sandy ground. Build on the rock. Now, if this resonated with you, I want to invite you to go deeper. Go to lifeunleashedlive.com and check out my video on how to end stress and attract anything you want from life. I'll walk you through the full framework that takes everything we talked about today and puts it into motion. A lot of people walk in knowing what they want to do or what they do. They walk out knowing who they are. The link is below, so come find your rock, and I'll see you there.